Hello, and welcome to another episode of Level Design Deep Dive. I'm mozidesigner, and today I'll be talking about a more general level design topic and how it is applied to several levels instead of focusing on one level. This episode might be a bit longer, so let's get started. The topic for this deep dive is simplicity. Long ago, when I got my first job in the games industry, a coworker had a small poster of Albert Einstein at his desk. At the bottom of the poster was a quote, "Things should be as simple as possible, but not one bit simpler." So what does this mean exactly? It can be open to interpretation, but from a level design view, it can be seen as keeping things simple and to the point when it comes to a layout construction. That is not to say that all layouts need to be simple in design, rather the opposite. Design a great layout to highlight the core intended gameplay. Simple designs can be bad inherently. Go back and watch my video on how I got into level design. Those early layouts I made were simple, but in a bad way, just shapes slapped together. Keeping things as simple as possible, but not one bit simpler, can relate to another design principle known as subtractive design. Meaning, you have an idea for a map, and you prototype it out. As you prototype it, you kind of cut off the fluff, excess paths, winding hallways, too many player options, etc., and boil it down to the layout to the bare essentials where it maintains the loop of fun. Once you get down to a layout where gameplay becomes king, you have reached the point of making things as simple as possible without one bit simpler. Just to reiterate, these are just my opinions and my ideas, so let's look at some examples of how keeping things simple can create fun layout. Note, this is not the end-all be-all list, but a handful of levels which in my opinion achieve excellent simple designs. As I cover each map, I'll explain how in my opinion the simplicity is achieved. So to get started, let's look at Q3 DM17, the longest yard from Quake 3. For the purpose of this video, I'm using the longest yard from Quake Champions, but nonetheless, the principles are the same. The longest yard is another one of those famous deathmatch levels from the heyday of arena shooters. It is basically 3 floating platforms in space which create a T-shaped pattern if we look at the top-down design of the map. So right there we have a simplicity of presentation. However, it is more than just 3 floating platforms which creates the simplicity. The design of the layout is also symmetrical, as each platform on the left and the right have the same item pickups, giving all players an equal chance to find the weapons and ammo. The item pickups in the level create loops that the player can run to pick up the guns, ammo, and power-ups. Along these loops, players will always run into each other as there is nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. Let's examine the following loop. Starting from the railgun, we can use one of the many jump pads to launch ourselves to get to another platform and pick up the rocket launcher. Using the nearby jump pad, we can get up to the next level to grab the shotgun. From the shotgun, the players can use the incline jump pad to launch themselves to the adjacent platform. Along the jump arc, players can pick up armor. Upon landing, players find another shotgun and ammo. Moving down to the lower level, another rocket launcher and equivalent ammo, basically symmetrical pickups. Players can also move between both platforms by using the connecting bridge or any of the jump pads on the lower level. In addition, players can also use the teleporters located on both sides to quickly relocate to the center of the map. The circular pickup loop reinforces the simplicity of the layout with the simplicity of item placement to keep the players constantly moving in a circle-like pattern. Now let's look at another example, DM Morbius from Unreal Tournament. For this video, I'm using the version from Unreal Tournament 3. Like the longest yard, Morbius has a simple layout that is basically a circle with 2 floors. Again, has a line of symmetry along the shape of the design, looking at the top down of the level. Around the level, there are pillars that provide some cover, but overall the map layout is very simple and offers a lot of close quarters combat. The item placement is very simple, with rocket launchers and subsequent ammo placed around the level and one redeemer placed in the center. Similar to the longest yard, the item placement in this level creates a circular loop that keeps players moving to create a sense of intense gameplay, and standing still is not an option. There's not much more to say about Morbius. It's as simple as it gets, but it keeps gameplay as a high priority. Going back to the early concept I mentioned of subtractive design, Morbius shines as an example that has all the fluff removed and boils the level to the core concept of keeping players in close proximity to each other while providing combat options on the lower and upper levels of the map. Another great map that creates a combat loop and exemplifies simplicity is Nuketown from Call of Duty Black Ops. Similar to Morbius, Nuketown has an inherent circular design looking at the top down of the level. Though it is not a literal circle like Morbius, the loop of the level creates a circle as well as a figure 8 pattern. This loop is broken up by 2 houses on each side of the map and 2 large sightline blockers in the middle with the moving truck and the school bus. Each team spawns behind each house respectively and pushes towards the center of the cul-de-sac. The layout of Nuketown provides multiple options by either going around the houses or through them via the upper or lower floors. Unlike the Longest Yard or Morbius, there are no weapon pickups to dictate the flow. However, it does share the similarity of being symmetrical, which is a key point being seen through all these maps I'm discussing. Each team, regardless of what side they spawn on, follow roughly the same circular path around the level. The key landmarks and simple flow of the outer circular nature and inner flow of figure 8 keeps players moving through the level and always encountering other players to frag along the way, either on the outer loop or clash focused at the central cul-de-sac. Now we come to the final map I wanted to talk about, which is Gridlock from Gears of War. Love it or hate it, from a level design point of view, Gridlock is a good example of keeping things as simple as possible without sacrificing core gameplay. Looking at the top down of the map, it is basically a T-shape similar to the Longest Yard. However, unlike that map, there is no free-for-all spawning, but a dedicated team spawn zones like Call of Duty. It shares some similarity to the arena shooter maps discussed earlier with the notion of weapon pickups placed within the level. On spawning, the curve of the spawn zone pushes players towards the core T-shaped combat space of the level, with the central path and flank routes pushing players towards the center of the map, similar to Call of Duty's Nuketown's cul-de-sac, to create optimal close-quarter combat confrontations. Each of the major weapon pickups are placed down the line of symmetry, in a way guiding players towards and keeping the combat focused around the center of the map, and creating a pickup loop that has players weaving in and out of the center line of the level. In addition, each of the 3 elevated positions also focus their line of sight towards the center of the level to reinforce the core combat space that is the center of the map. Cover is strategically placed but not overdone with enough negative space in between the core paths to keep the map readable and playable. With a mix of weapon pickups and easy to understand layout of Gridlock, it offers a simple yet effective design to bring players towards the center of the map to duke it out and to gain victory over their opponents. In conclusion, keeping things simple as possible, but not one bit simpler, can be achieved in level design by focusing on a few key aspects learned from the examples. Again, as a reiteration, these are just a handful of levels that, in my opinion, highlight simplicity. I'm sure there's more maps out there, but for the sake of this video, I've chose these few maps. So what are the key takeaways or lessons learned to create simplicity and fun gameplay? First, when designing a level, don't overcomplicate the design with multiple unnecessary paths. Consider the idea as attractive design, boiling your layout to its core elements to facilitate and highlight the intended gameplay of the game you're working on. There's no harm in thinking about using simple shapes like circles, figure 8s, or T-shapes covered from the examples to focus the gameplay and where you want your players to go. Depending on your game rules, if it's allowed, symmetry helps a lot to keep things balanced and equal for both sides and help you create those simple shapes that help boil down the combat to a central location or around a central loop. And finally, speaking of loops, you can create combat loops with weapon pickups like the Longest Yard, or like Gridlock, having weapons down the central line of symmetry to create a flow around a core combat space. Combat loops can also be created with level geometry, as we saw with Nuketown, from a top-down point of view where it's a circle, but the inner path creates a figure 8 loop. At the end of the day, if the layout is created and lets the gameplay shine, in my opinion, you have achieved simplicity without being one bit simpler. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this episode of Level Design Deep Dive. Be sure to leave your questions or comments down below. As always, be sure to like and subscribe. If you want to, please consider supporting the channel directly on the join button or the Patreon link below. And on that note, have a great day. Cheers.